Each of us brings our own unique story here. We gather to share that story, to find our place in the larger story of community, and weave our histories with other histories into the sacred fabric of life. Each of us brings our own questions and struggles here. We gather to companion one another, to journey together in faith, to dream and work together for the healing of the world. We gather to celebrate our joy, give voice to our sorrow, and honor the fullness of life. Together, we sing and pray, laugh and cry, affirm and bless. Together, we say yes to life and to love. Amen and namaste. Marriage, the holy institution of marriage, is only between a man and a woman because it's what it was ordained by God. Well, no, but I hope that got your attention. I certainly don't believe that, nor am I willing to give up on the very rich and powerful idea of marriage simply because I'm gay. I'm also not willing to give up on the beautiful and meaningful ritual of a wedding ceremony used to initiate a marriage. These concepts, marriage and weddings, have real worth, value, and meaning, and I refuse to abandon them simply because many other religious people all around our country object to them for same-sex couples, because they believe marriages are sanctioned by God. Let's be clear. Civil unions, commitment ceremonies, and other similar terms for marriages and weddings simply don't have the same power or significance in our society, and they are unacceptable. At least they are for me. We can, in fact, embrace a word or a concept without subscribing to all the so-called rules and requirements often attributed to that word or concept by others. For instance, there is another word and a concept which many in the UU world have abandoned, even though they are very powerful words and concepts. And that word is worship, and the concept is a worship service. And the rationale behind abandoning them is that in many religious traditions, worship is reserved for a god or gods. When we abandon this concept, sadly, I believe we are depriving ourselves of rich and powerful language only because others believe something different. A talk or a program simply doesn't convey the same gravity as does the word worship. And if you look up the origins of the word worship, yes, you will find that it does mean to praise a god. But it also means to acknowledge the worth or worthiness of something or someone. And in our worship services, that's exactly what we do. We acknowledge or vigorously point out the importance or significance of something or someone. Even so, many UUs are reluctant to use the word worship, and in my opinion, instead we use rather anemic words like program to decide what we share here on Sunday mornings. If we're so opposed to the negative connotations associated with the word worship, then why do we pick the same exact time in the week to share our programs, as do other religious communities who unabashedly call them worship services? And we call this building a church and this room a sanctuary. We don't shy away from those words. Our resistance to using the word worship also reminds me of one of my favorite sayings: don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. That saying simply means that at the center of some things, there is something precious which must be protected, and it often gets dirty. So be careful when you clean something up, and be sure you don't throw out the precious center after you've finished. If we don't proclaim who and what we are in language common to almost everyone who believes something similar to us, they may not even realize we are here. And our ongoing fight for our truly liberal and progressive values and tradition, which is almost totally absent from the remainder of the religious world, might not survive. We are, in fact, a home for atheists, humanists, agnostics, and yes, even deists who believe in some universal force, just not a patriarchal God. These are all people who want a religious home that isn't available to them in most other religious traditions. So yes, I firmly believe we need to proclaim loud and clear who and what we are, as you use, and we need to champion our values, which are absolutely worthy of praise. And that often happens right here in our worship services on Sunday morning. And since we are all members of lay-led UU churches, it is our collective responsibility either to help create worthwhile and meaningful worship services or to actively support those individuals who do. Okay, so I've shared my opinion that we should call what we do here on Sunday mornings worship. But exactly why do we worship? There are many reasons, but one reason we worship is we all need reminders. At least I do. And weekly reminders are often a good thing. As you use, we have these 8 principles, and yet sometimes we take them for granted. Many years ago, it was the first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, that originally attracted me to the UU world and led me to visit my first UU church. And it particularly called to me as a gay man. I didn't and still don't feel that worth and dignity in any other religious tradition. Even so, today I find I often take the inherent worth and dignity somewhat for granted and don't exactly apply it to all other people. Recent political divisions have highlighted that reality for me. I don't have to agree with someone to acknowledge and respect their inherent worth and dignity, even if they don't reciprocate. For our values to truly be our values, they must be true for us even when others don't share those values. In fact, accepting and affirming others just as they are can become acts of love. When I'm confronted with someone who opposes my values, it doesn't mean I give up on my values or that I stop fighting for them. It just means I must somehow live them more fully. And that's hard. And frequent reminders, yes, sometimes weekly reminders, actually help. And being here with others who are also struggling is a good place to reinforce my values. Another one of our values is the encouragement to spiritual growth in ourselves and in our congregations. In reality, that spiritual growth never ends. It goes on forever. At least I'm certain it will for me. Maybe you are another Buddha, but I'm guessing spiritual growth for you will continue forever as well. Here too, we can help each other with that ongoing process in our worship services. Once again, our worship services should provide reminders of who and what we strive for in our spiritual lives and on our own individual spiritual journeys. I truly believe we are all works in progress. Recently, one of my dear friends gave me a book titled The Daily Stoic, which was written and edited by Ryan Holiday. For more than a year, I read and seriously considered the entry for each day. The reading from May 17th really struck a chord with me. Each of the daily entries starts out with a quote from one of the Stoic philosophers from ancient Greece and Italy. Epictetus, who was quoted that particular day, and then the author of the book follows the quote with his own thoughts. So first, I'll share the quote and then Holiday's commentary. Show me someone sick and happy, in danger and happy, dying and happy, exiled and happy, disgraced and happy. Show me, by God, how much I'd like to see a Stoic. But since you can't show me someone that perfectly formed, at least show me someone actively forming themselves. Yes, please show me. Holiday then writes, instead of seeing philosophy as an end to which one aspires, see it as something one applies, not occasionally, but over the course of a life, seeking incremental progress along the way, sustained execution, not shapeless epiphanies. Epictetus loved to shake up his students out of their smug satisfaction with their own progress. He wanted to remind them, and now you, of the constant work and serious training needed every day if we are ever to approach that perfect form. It's important for us to remember in our own journey to self-improvement, one never arrives. The sage, the perfect Stoic who behaves perfectly in every situation, is an ideal, not an end. So here's my recap that I use every day in my own spiritual practice. On your journey to self-improvement and self-awareness, with all its unexpected twists and turns, you will never arrive. And that's okay. It's the same for everyone. Worship services here help me with my own spiritual journey, and I'm guessing they often help you too. Probably the most important reason we come together to worship each week, at least it is for me, is to offer something to each other to deal with this very complex, interdependent web of life we all find ourselves participating in. Many religions focus on something after this life, while we focus on this life, the only life we will ever actually have. So here in this sanctuary, our challenge is to take on each of the many complex life issues we choose to tackle and make it worthwhile, give it value, meaning and relevance for our lives now. Those complex life issues come in an almost infinite variety of possibilities. It may be in the form of hope when we seem to have lost all hope. Hope can manifest when we are simply educated on some specific issue, or sometimes when we're provided with a broader, long-term perspective, one we were previously unaware of. Or hope often materializes when we're told of promising new initiatives we didn't know were underway. All of these forms of creating hope actually happened here during the pandemic, and they gave us all hope. So providing hope is something we can and often do here during our Sunday worship services. But obviously, those infinite life issues aren't just limited to hope. Our worship services often come in the form of coping mechanisms to help us deal with grief, anger, fear, or any of a myriad of emotions that frequently take over our lives. A memorial service or a celebration of life is a special kind of worship service we hold that offers support during times of death. And horrific tragedies like 9/11, we come together to help us process the events because we are better together helping each other than we are alone and without support. And sometimes our worship services inspire us to do something, to physically take action, to help right a wrong or help mend something that's broken and needs our attention. Our services on climate change, plastics, racial injustice, reproductive rights, they don't solve those problems, but they often remind us of tangible ways we can each take to help alleviate instead of exacerbating the problems. Yes, our worship services often inspire us to take action. And taking action does, in fact, make a difference in a world that is often indifferent. And I'll end where I began. Worship services don't all have to be serious or sad. They can be full of joy, the joy of life and everyday events and milestones in our lives. There are worship services in honor of new births, which bring joy and love to the families where they happen. And there are special services for major transition in our lives, church anniversaries where we honor the long-term bonds between us all, and milestones like coming of age for children and the graduations later in their lives. These are all celebrations of life and living. And finally, a wedding ceremony is a worship service where two people commit to joining their lives, sharing their love for each other, and proclaiming it to the world. These are indeed worship services worthy of our love and attention. So in conclusion, our challenge with each and every worship service we create or participate in is to infuse that service with meaning, value, and genuine worth, and always make the overall service reflective of the essence at the heart of that particular worship service. I'll leave you with one final thought from Gordon McKeeman, who said, "Worship need not cease. It can echo in our lives, in our words, in our deeds, in our moods, and even in our dreams. Carry it with you wherever you go. Be a blessing in your going out and your coming in." Yes, let the words of wisdom, truths, and inspiration you hear in this your sanctuary echo with you always. Amen and namaste.